They laughed at him. They betrayed him. They stole his characters. Studios went bankrupt. Dreams shattered. But he kept drawing because he believed that dreams weren't just for children. They were for those brave enough not to give up. This is not a story about cartoons. It's a story about imagination, about a man who built a world he wanted to live in and then invited all of us to join him. This is the story of Walt Disney, and maybe it will awaken the dreamer in you. Part 1. The Boy Who Dared to Dream. Before the mouse, the castles, and the magic, there was just a kid with big eyes and a wild imagination. Born into simplicity, Walter Elias Disney was born in 1901 in Chicago into a working-class family with no riches, no connections, just a stubborn Midwestern spirit. His father, Elias Disney, was strict and conservative. His mother, Flora, was kind and nurturing. They moved often, from Chicago to Missouri, then to Kansas City, always chasing better jobs, but rarely finding stability. The young Walt found refuge in just two things: drawing and dreaming. The start of imagination. At just 7 years old, Walt began to sketch animals on scraps of paper. By 10, he was selling small drawings to neighbors. He loved trains, fantasy, and anything that moved. But what made Walt different wasn't just talent. It was how he saw the world. While others saw cornfields, he imagined kingdoms. While others saw barns, he saw castles. First brushes with storytelling. Walt would often perform short plays for his siblings, using toys and handmade puppets. At school, he'd draw in the margins of his books, not because he was bored, but because his mind couldn't sit still. His first mentor was Mark Twain, not in person, but through books. The humor, the adventure, the storytelling style, all left a deep impression. A boy in war. At 16, Walt tried to enlist in World War I, but was rejected for being too young. So he faked his age, joined the Red Cross as an ambulance driver, and went to France. There, while others wrote letters home, Walt filled his notebooks with cartoons of soldiers, jeeps, and military life. Even on foreign soil, surrounded by pain, he kept seeing the world through a pencil. Lesson: big imaginations often grow in small, quiet places, but they're always looking for a way out. Walt didn't wait for permission to dream. He didn't need wealth, fame, or approval. He had a pencil and a vision. The fall before the mouse. Before Mickey, he lost it all. And that's exactly why he won. First, big leap. Laugh-O-Gram Studios. After returning from the war, Walt settled in Kansas City and began creating short animated films. In 1922, he launched his first company, Laugh-O-Gram Studios. Young, broke, full of wild ideas, he convinced local investors and built a small team. They made quirky animations that combined live action with cartoons, something rare at the time. Walt believed cartoons could tell real stories, not just jokes. The dream collapses. The ideas were bold, but the money ran out. Walt didn't understand business yet. He was an artist trapped in a CEO's chair. Deadlines missed, investors pulled out, staff left. In 1923, Laugh-O-Gram went bankrupt. Walt had no job, no company, no money, and just one suitcase. But he had something else: a reel of film, and a ridiculous amount of hope. One-way ticket to Hollywood. Walt took a train to Los Angeles, chasing the tiniest spark of opportunity. He arrived with $40, a sketchbook, and one plan: I'm going to make it, or I'm going to starve trying. There was no studio waiting, no contacts, just rejection after rejection. Alice Saves the Day. One of his experimental films, Alice's Wonderland, combined animation with a real girl interacting with cartoons. A distributor from New York saw it and signed Walt to a deal. Suddenly, the dream was alive again. Walt founded the Disney Brothers studio with his brother Roy, who handled the business side. They worked from a rented office in the back of a real estate agency. The betrayal that changed everything. In 1927, Walt created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, a hit character. But the studio didn't own the rights, the distributor did. Without warning, they stole Oswald poached most of Walt's team, and left him with nothing. Walt was 26, betrayed, broken, back at zero. Lesson: you'll never know who you are until someone tries to take everything from you. Walt didn't quit. He didn't complain. He went home, took out his notebook, and began to sketch a mouse. The mouse that built an empire. He lost a rabbit and drew a mouse. The world would never be the same. Born on a napkin. On the train ride back from New York, after losing Oswald, Walt started sketching a new character. A small creature, clever, brave, full of heart, just like me but with bigger ears. That's how Mickey Mouse was born, literally drawn on a train in a moment of crisis. The voice of his own creation. Walt didn't just draw Mickey, he gave him a voice, his own. In 1928, Mickey debuted in Steamboat Willie, one of the first cartoons with synchronized sound. Audiences were stunned. It was more than funny. It was alive. Mickey conquers the world. Mickey became a phenomenon, everywhere. Merchandise, toys, watches, newspapers. For the first time, a cartoon character became a global brand. And behind it all, Walt, working 14-hour days, demanding perfection, building something the world had never seen. The mind behind the mouse. Walt wasn't just an animator. He was a story architect, a voice actor, a marketing genius, a studio builder, and a brand visionary. He created Donald Duck, Goofy, Pluto, and the rest of the gang. But Mickey was always more than a cartoon. Mickey is me in spirit. The way I wish I could live, fearless and funny, no matter what. The first Oscar for animation. In 1932, Walt received a Special Academy Award for creating Mickey Mouse, the first time animation was honored this way. It was official. Cartoons were no longer just kids' stuff. They were art. Lesson: the world may try to silence your voice, but sometimes that's exactly when your true voice is born. Mickey wasn't just a drawing. He was proof that resilience can become legend. And Walt, the boy with the pencil, was finally becoming the man behind the magic. A kingdom drawn frame by frame. They called it Disney's Folly. He called it a masterpiece. A dream no one believed in. By the mid-1930s, Walt was already a pioneer. But he wanted more than short cartoons. He dreamed of creating the first full-length animated feature film. The idea? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a classic fairy tale, but completely animated. Critics laughed. No one will sit through a 90-minute cartoon, they said. Even his own team thought he was losing it. All in, again, Walt mortgaged his house, took loans, and poured every cent the studio had into the film. He worked obsessively on the story, the animation, the music, revolutionizing how animation looked, sounded, and felt. Realistic character emotions, multi-plane camera depth, orchestral score. This wasn't a cartoon, this was cinema. The premiere that silenced everyone in 1937, Snow White, premiered at the Carthay Circle Theater in Hollywood. The audience laughed, they cried, they stood and applauded for minutes. Charlie Chaplin was there, and he called it a triumph. The biggest hit of its time, Snow White, became the highest-grossing film of the decade, only surpassed later by Gone with the Wind. It earned millions, won a special Oscar, with 7 miniature Oscars, and cemented Walt Disney as a visionary, not just a dreamer. Building the foundation with the profits, Walt built a new state-of-the-art studio in Burbank, with art departments, screening rooms, and even a cafeteria designed for collaboration. This became the launchpad for future classics: Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi. Lesson: everyone calls it impossible until you show them the first frame. Walt didn't just create a film. He created a new medium, one where stories didn't need actors, only imagination and heart. And the kingdom of Disney? It was finally real, drawn frame by one unstoppable man. Battles for creativity. The higher you rise, the more fragile your kingdom becomes. Burnout behind the curtain. After hits like Snow White, Pinocchio, and Fantasia, Walt Disney was the face of creative genius. But behind the curtain, he was sleeping just 3 to 4 hours a night, taking massive loans to fund films, and fighting constant self-doubt and exhaustion. I lived with the fear that everything could collapse tomorrow, he admitted. A studio divided. As the studio grew, so did the pressure. Artists worked long hours for modest pay. And despite Disney's success, many felt underappreciated and disposable. They wanted better wages, credit for their work, a voice inside the company. Instead, they got silence. In 1941, the studio exploded into chaos. Disney's animators went on strike. Pickets, posters, chants, outside the gates of the very dream they helped build. Walt takes it personally. To Walt, this wasn't just a labor issue. It was betrayal from people he saw as family. He believed they hadn't just turned against him. They had turned against the dream. It wasn't just a strike. It was a crack in the castle. The studio grows colder. Walt responded by firing some workers, distancing himself from others, and tightening control. The once playful studio became colder, more corporate, more cautious. And Walt? He withdrew, mentally and emotionally. Politics and paranoia. In the post-war years, Walt testified before the House Un-American Activities Committee, accusing some former animators of communist ties. It damaged his reputation. Some now called him a paranoid authoritarian in a fairy tale suit. Family cracks. His obsession with work consumed him. He spent less time with his daughters. He smiled less. And yet, he was still dreaming. I saw my father build and lose. I didn't want to repeat that. But maybe I already had. Lesson. The people closest to you can become your fiercest critics, especially when your dream grows bigger than them. Walt Disney paid a price, his health, his relationships, and the joy that once fueled him. But he wasn't done, because in the middle of all that pain, he had a new dream, one even crazier than the last. Disneyland, the dream they all laughed at. He wanted to build a place where adults forget their age, and children feel immortal. The idea was born on a bench. Every Sunday, Walt took his daughters to the park. They rode the carousel. He sat on a bench, and he thought, why isn't there a place where parents and kids can have fun together? That idea became a vision. That vision became an obsession. Not a theme park, a world Walt didn't want noisy rides and greasy food. He wanted an immersive place where music played from hidden speakers. Staff stayed in character. Every brick told a story. He wanted to build a real-life fantasy. No one believed in it. Banks refused to fund it. Investors laughed. Even his own team doubted the plan. A cartoon amusement park? Are you out of your mind? So Walt did what he always did. He bet everything. He mortgaged his house again. He sold personal assets, borrowed against his life insurance, created a new company, WED Enterprises, to secretly develop the park outside studio control. The move that saved him, TV. To raise money, Walt pitched a radical idea to a struggling network, ABC. I'll create a weekly television show and use it to promote Disneyland. The show became a massive hit, drawing millions of viewers and the investors he needed. Building the dream in a swamp construction began in Anaheim, California in 1954. The land was marshy. Everything had to be built from scratch. Walt obsessed over every detail. Benches, lamps, fences, smells, colors. Disneyland will never be completed, he said. As long as there is imagination, it will grow. Opening day, disaster. July 17th, 1955. They called it Black Sunday. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius. Asphalt melted, rides broke, toilets overflowed, counterfeit tickets flooded the park. Critics called it a failure. But the people returned. Despite the chaos, people came back and kept coming. Over 3 million visitors in the first year, waiting 4+ hours to enter crying when they left. For the first time in my life, Walt said, people are walking inside my dream. Lesson. If everyone laughs at your dream, don't stop. It just means you're the only one who sees it yet. Disneyland wasn't a park. It was a portal between imagination and reality. And Walt? He wasn't a man anymore. He was a world builder. Legacy of the dreamer. His heart stopped, but his dreams still clocking every day. A bigger dream. EPCOT. After Disneyland's success, Walt didn't rest. He began dreaming of something even more ambitious. A city of the future. A place where technology, community, and innovation coexisted, clean energy, driverless transit, constant progress. He called it EPCOT, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Not just a park, a living city. Cancer, silence, and sketches. In 1966, Walt was diagnosed with lung cancer. Within weeks, his health deteriorated rapidly. He stopped attending meetings, spent time mostly in the hospital. But his mind never stopped. Above his hospital bed, he taped sketches of EPCOT, staring at them each day. This is what's next, he whispered. December 15th, 1966. Walt Disney passed away at the age of 65. He died quietly, but left behind a roar that never faded. The world without Walt, most feared it was over. Without Walt, the magic would fade. But the opposite happened. Disney World opened in Florida. His studio produced hits for decades. His parks expanded worldwide. Walt had built not just a company, but a culture of relentless imagination. A symbol, not just a man, he became a myth. A name whispered by dreamers. A smile seen in every spark of wonder. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Walt Disney. Final lesson. In a world where everyone plays it safe, the ones who dream loud enough rewrite the rules. Walt Disney was never chasing success. He was chasing possibility. And that chase still goes on. Because the greatest thing he ever built was not a castle, a park, or a film. It was permission for all of us to dream without limits.